Gentlemen, let's take a look over at the Western Conference. We got the Dallas Stars taking on the Edmonton Oilers, and as I had pulled up over on the Pinnacle Sportsbook, you can find series prices for this one currently sitting Dallas Stars minus 132, the Oilers plus 115. If you want to look at some of the series spread prices, you can find the Stars minus 1.5 plus 165, the Oilers plus 1.5 minus 191 there as well. As far as this series goes, we know kind of everyone's rooting interest from what we had during the regular season, what we were going through in round 1, round 2 here, and it was a lot of loaded up on the Dallas Stars. Moretto, at this point here now, you're into the Western Conference Finals. Is there anything else you'd be looking to add here on Dallas? Are you finding any value in the number where it's just too good, you have to play it? What are your thoughts on the price and kind of how you view these two teams matching up here?
I didn't add to it just because I am sitting on so much Panthers West right now that I don't really feel the need to.
Stars
but
West.
Honestly, Stars. I really do like the price on the Stars though. It's been bet up a little bit, depending on where you look. I think we're sitting now at like minus 132-ish. Yeah, there were like a lot of minus 120 openers that I really liked with the Stars still. Honestly, I don't know how many times we have to see it. These top-heavy teams, these like kind of perimeter teams that, you know, they play the style of hockey that the Oilers do. It's not conducive to playoff success, and they made light work of the Kings in round 1. Fair enough. Kings aren't exactly a great team, and they had been kind of spiraling for a long time. That Canucks series was an absolute grind, and the Canucks did not play well, really, at any point in that series, and they still made that very, very difficult on the Oilers. I'm just not anywhere close to where the market is on this Oilers team right now. I think defensively, that second pairing of Nurse and Desharnais, then you have like Ceci on the third pair, like their decor is going to get eaten alive by the Stars team that can roll 4 lines and can just continue to come at you, just relentless on that forecheck. I don't see how their defense and goaltending holds up in this series. I really don't. And maybe, famous last words, obviously the excellence of Draisaitl and McDavid can, undo a lot of that. But the Stars are very much like, this is a team that's able to shut down top talent. We saw it against the Avs, a team that profiles very similar to this Oilers team. And how comfortable that series was. Honestly, that series could have been a sweep. Like Tanev has been exceptional this playoffs. They have that second pairing that is just going to go out there and play the tough matchups and just completely negate what other teams' top players are going to do. They have to split up Draisaitl and McDavid at this point, because if they don't, I think they're in a lot of trouble. Either way, I still don't think they're getting enough secondary offense to compete with the Stars team that is getting a ton of offense from up and down this lineup. Defensively can just beat you any way they want to. I think this is a very good matchup for the Stars, and maybe famous last words, whatever. But I know that some of those public models are pretty high on the Oilers. I know some of them even have the Oilers favored. I very much disagree with that.
Yeah, some of those public models are fairly high on the Oilers that we've seen, kind of even some favoring the Oilers heading into this series, Moretto, that we've seen. Rob, I don't know where you're kind of at. I know you haven't been as high on the Stars, or publicly as high on the Stars as some of the rest of the Edgework team. Where do you come into them on this series?
So I'm actually very high on the Stars. I'm also just very high on the Oilers, and have been for a while now. To me, this is a very challenging series to handicap, because if I was going to nitpick one thing about the Dallas Stars, it would probably be that, Roope Hintz was their number 1 center pretty much all year. And Roope Hintz is a very good player, don't get me wrong. He's just like not a true number 1 center. And now he's dealing with an undisclosed injury, which people don't really know what it is. He could be back. They just keep listing him as day-to-day. He could play game 1. He might, it might linger. I don't know. But I don't love the Stars as much without him in the lineup. I just think that they're, you elevate Wyatt Johnston to a 1C, and he's a great player. I love him. He's playing really good in the playoffs, but he's kind of, it just creates issues across the lineup overall. To me, Edmonton made a big move taking Darnell Nurse away from Cody Ceci and splitting them up, because that pairing was just an absolute abomination. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it before in my entire life. They've played a lot better since then. But who knows? That could just be because, sorry, so many apologies. But I think Vancouver was a pretty weak team, even though they took Edmonton to 7. So there's a lot of uncertainty here. I don't want to get involved with the series price. If I did have to bet the series, I probably would bet the Oilers, but I'm not going to, and I haven't. I'm looking at this more on a game-by-game basis just to see how Dallas lines up for this. But there are some good points by Alex. I mean, typically speaking, if you have good depth, I would call this great depth for the Stars, that tends to win out versus the teams that are just top heavy. And Edmonton has like a lot in the bottom 6 that leaves much to be desired. Like the Corey Perry trade, like he's useless. He's like useless as a player nowadays. Might as well just be a ghost on the bench. There's a lot lower in that lineup that the Stars can take advantage of. Like Dadonov on the 4th line is absurd relative to who he's going to be going up against in this series. But it's challenging. I mean, honestly, I think it's just a good series price, and I'll attack it game by game. The one thing I will say as an advocate for the Stars is there's a lot of guys in that lineup that really haven't gotten it going yet. Like Tyler Seguin has 3 goals in the playoffs. Jamie Benn has 3 goals in the playoffs. Pavelski has 1 goal in the playoffs. Matt Duchene has 2. Like they haven't even gotten the real secondary scoring yet. And that makes them incredibly dangerous. So player props, I think, very much in play on some of the top Dallas guys because Edmonton can give up goals in bunches sometimes, especially with their goaltending situation.
Rob, are there any series player props that you would want to attack ahead of this one starting rather than game by game?
I'm going to go game by game. Honestly, I'm not huge on the series props because then you're kind of locked into it. It talked about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins earlier in the playoffs or going into the playoffs as a guy who was like, I think the final 20 Oilers games of the regular season, he scored 2 goals, but he was playing power play 1 consistently on a line with McDavid or Draisaitl. And that's kind of like manifested itself into like really good plays recently where he's really upped his game. To me, like I'm looking at the prices on Joe Pavelski to score goals. Like look at the game 1 price tomorrow. You can see plus 330 on Pavelski. Pavelski has 1 goal in the playoffs, 2 assists. Pavelski has 52 Corsi attempts in the playoffs. He's playing 18 minutes a game. Like it's going to come for him at some point. It's just going to he's on power play 1. He's going to be playing on one of the top 2 lines. Like we're getting to a point here where this is just has to turn. He's shooting 5.5% in the playoffs. I mean, you look at his career shooting percentage, it's almost 13%. He shot 14% in the regular season this year, 15% last year. It's going to turn at some point. So to me, Pavelski is the guy that I want to target pretty regularly in this series at these prices. You basically need him to score once every 3 games, and I'm not so sure about the Oilers' back end at all. So that's my guy. I'm riding the Joe Pavelski train for this series.
Alber, is there any attack angle that you have on this series outside of just anything you've already loaded up on Stars going into this one?
Yeah, I agree on the game-by-game angle. I don't have anything else going in. I do have some Dallas West stuff pending here. I agree with pretty much everything Moretto said, and I touched on a lot of it last week, where like these high-end teams without a lot of depth, just they can win a series or so. Like LA wasn't that good, but they just don't go far, right? Like we see this every single year. So yeah, like I love Dallas in the spot. I like them a lot against Colorado for kind of a lot of the same reasons. We'll come back to that. But also like Dallas just got done playing a team that does profile very similarly to this. And like, even when they kind of ended up winning game 6 in overtime, like you hear Matt Duchene talking about after the game, like they kind of realized that like, that's how they need to play against those top heavy teams. And kind of, if they can wear out that top line, like they can attack the rest of that lineup. And I think it's a very similar situation here when they look at Edmonton. Like if they can find a way to keep McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent-Hopkins even somewhat in check, like the rest of that Oilers lineup is very exploitable for a team that is extremely deep, even if they do lack that top end talent. So yeah, no, I do like Dallas quite a bit here. I think their depth wins out here for sure.
I just add 2 things too about the depth conversation. Niels Lundqvist, who has been playing for the Stars because Yanni Hakanpää's been out, is playing like 5 minutes a night. They're basically playing with 5 defensemen, which is not ideal. Hakanpää's going to be back very early in this series. Probably not game 1, maybe game 2, maybe game 3. Hakanpää's a very good defenseman who can play top 4 at this level, but will likely be on the third pairing. And like that's a huge boost for them defensively as well, to not have to, basically have one guy who's a borderline liability out there who they can't even trust to throw on the ice. The other thing is Adam Henrique, who's like one of the few like very good depth guys for the Oilers, probably is going to be coming back earlier at one point in the series. Instead, he's not available for game 1. This guy is basically dealing with a high ankle sprain. He will, I'm sure, come back at one point, and yeah, he's not going to be effective. It's just they're going to force him back because they have nothing else right now in the bottom 6. We saw, I know, like, I don't want to start the whole Mitch Marner conversation. There's a lot, but like Marner was likely dealing with some sort of high ankle sprain earlier in the season that was still lingering in the playoffs. We saw how ineffective he was. You can attribute that to whatever you want. That's fine. But like, that's a very difficult injury to play through. Obviously, like they're kind of backed into a corner where they're going to have to force him back into the lineup. It's not going to be pretty. So like that, they're basically going to play this series without him or with a very, hampered Adam Henrique. And that's not, it's just not like, it just plays into the fact that the Stars are getting even deeper and the Oilers are just not getting reinforcements back there.
Yeah. On the depth conversation, Alber is just getting roasted in the chat. The Wednesday is, his confidence level might be high in the Rangers, but his self-confidence is going to be at an all-time low by the end of this show. On the depth conversation, just with the Stars, like they rolled the Avalanche late in that series, but I don't think it's the same top-end talent. Like I don't, because once Nichushkin went out of that series, I don't want to say it's a foregone conclusion because it can happen, but Rantanen did not look good this playoffs. Like, I don't know if he's dealing with something or he just did not look good. It was really McKinnon carrying the load at forward. And I think Edmonton's like high end is a lot higher than the way Colorado ended the series, if I'm going to put it that way. And like, I don't want to compare Evan Bouchard to Cale Makar. Like Makar is special, but he had a down year. Like Bouchard has come on quite a bit. I think Edmonton, if Edmonton had matched up against Colorado, I would have very likely been betting them at market prices that would have been available because I think that they'd be that much better without Nichushkin. So I that's what worries me a lot about it's like the Stars did dominate Colorado towards the end of that series, but once Nichushkin went out, it's just not even a real team. Like it is a real team, but it's just not the quality of what Edmonton will bring forth, in my opinion.
That's fair. Cale Makar, though, is also like one of those, game breakers as well. Pretty much one of like best defensemen in the NHL or close to it. And I think there's something to be said that like McKinnon is consistently just a dog in the playoffs. He's unreal. Yeah. So to be able to limit him the way they did, and like you look at, and now again, this is kind of narrative-y, and this is also like very like we're making assumptions here. I'm making assumptions here, but Connor McDavid does not look like Connor McDavid right now. There have been like rumblings coming out of like Edmonton that he's dealing with something, a bit of an injury, and that's limiting him. I can see that very much being the case. He did not play a ton in Game 7, especially early on in that game, and what was a tight game. Like his minutes were way down. He scored 2 goals in the playoffs so far. Like I think McDavid is not at 100% health. And again, you're not going to like necessarily bet on something like that without, any sort of confirmation. But like, I think there is something there.
Yeah, and just to kind of touch on the point you made on Lundqvist, like he wasn't playing at all. Like the most he played in that entire series was 6 minutes in Game 4, and that was a game they won 5-1. And it was so bad that he didn't even get dressed after Game 5. Like he didn't even get dressed for Game 6. They played Alex Petrovic instead, and he played 2 minutes and 28 seconds in Game 5 at home. So it's like, yeah, obviously you kind of get out of that. Like it is hard to get through a full playoffs, obviously kind of rolling 5D. So like the fact that they won't have to now will certainly help them in the series.
That Vegas Game 7 was Niels Lundqvist came out for his first shift of the game, made a mistake that let Vegas tie it, and he basically saw the ice like once again for the rest of the game. It's pretty bad.
He was just a body in that game, basically. Yeah. It's like Alber on the Wednesday show.
Niels Lundqvist.
Alber just getting absolutely.
The chat wasn't doing enough. You had to fire one off too.
It took 31 minutes today, Alber, but I finally I succumbed to. I just couldn't get through it any further. Could
We're
not
saving
go any
receipts,
further.
don't worry. Save receipts.
Last thing I want to excuse me. Last thing I want to ask you guys before we get off the series preview and actually touch on game one here. Just predictions. Who's gonna win? How many games? Rob, we'll start with you.
Both series.
Just the Stars Oilers one here. Sorry.
I'll say Stars win in 7.
Okay. Moretto.
I will say I'm going to say Stars in 5. Skinner implodes a little bit defensively. They can't get a stop, and it ends pretty quick.
Alber.
Split the difference. Stars in 6.
I got Stars in 6 here as well. That's probably not a great sign here all the way around. 4-person sweep on the Stars, so that's tough to see. But